Mr. Rutte, the build-up of forces in Europe comes after more than 3 years of war in Ukraine. Today, NATO also started its annual nuclear drills in the Netherlands, actually your home country. Can all of this be understood that NATO is preparing for war with Russia?
No, we want to prevent war. And to prevent war, we have to make sure we are so strong that the Russians will never try to attack us. We are a defensive organization. We are there to defend our values, democracy, the rule of law, the freedom of the media, freedom of speech, to organize your own political parties, everything which we hold dear. That's why we are there. And we know that the Russians at the moment, and I'm afraid for the foreseeable future, are a threat, a long-term threat to NATO, so we have to prepare.
We are not at war, but we are no longer at peace either, the German Chancellor Marc said recently. Are you concerned about the safety of the European population?
I'm not currently, because I know that today we can defend ourselves and the Russians will not try to attack us. But don't forget that Russia is now spending 40%, not 40, so not 40% of its state budget on defense.
How did the most recent US elections affect the relationships within NATO? In the past meetings with President Trump, there appeared to be some friendly and warm exchanges between you and Mr. Trump. Is the United States still fully committed to the Article 5?
Absolutely. And President Trump himself, I know him also from his previous term, when he was term 45, when I was Prime Minister of the Netherlands, he has always been completely committed to NATO. But he also expected something, which, by the way, many presidents expected, but were not able to achieve, and he has achieved it. And the expectation was that where the US is about 3.5% of its national income is spent on defense, he expects us to do the same. Well, the good news is from the Hague summit that we will do that, not only because we want to equalize with the US, to make sure that we deal with that irritant they felt against NATO and against European and Canadian allies, but first of all because we have to defend ourselves. We know we have the plans in place to implement all those plans to keep ourselves safe against Russia and other adversaries. We need to spend that same 3.5%.
Regarding that last summit in Hague, in Slovenia there is a widespread opposition to the agreed goal of spending 5% of GDP on defense. Many critics argue that such spending primarily benefits to the US military industry and that this level of investment would undermine our social welfare system. How do you respond?
Well, first of all, on the first issue of where do you spend the money. So you are not required to spend it in the US. One of the problems we have with the US that also their defense industrial base is not putting out enough output to make sure that we can rapidly ramp up our overall defense. We need to produce more in the US, more in Europe. We have fantastic companies. You have in this country now Dovos, where you have brought together your whole defense industry. I predict that Slovenia over the coming years will get a considerable defense dividend from the investments you are making in defense, like other countries are doing. If you don't want to buy in the US, you buy somewhere else in Europe. But I think you will also buy in the US and also in Europe. You will do both because we need basically that whole defense industrial base in Europe. And then your second question, I mean, this is about defending who we are. This is making sure that our societies can stay free, can stay safe, will stay democracies with all the values we hold so dear. To do that, and that's why NATO was founded as a defensive alliance, we have to make sure that we are strong enough for Russia never to mount an attack against us.
Are NATO countries prepared to defend its airspace? We have seen incidents involving drones entering NATO airspace. Has NATO failed in providing the basic protection?
No, I would argue to the contrary. I would say that when it comes to the drones in Poland, for example, whether they were intentionally from Russia or not, anyway, it was reckless what Russia did. It was unacceptable. And I was very proud as a Dutchman, it was a Dutch F-35 shooting down drones in Poland. And when it comes to the MiG, so the fighter jets from Russia in Estonian airspace, against whether it was intentional or not, it was against reckless. Again, it was reckless. And it was Italian F-35s basically escorting these planes out of Estonian airspace. If they would have posed a threat to Estonia, of course they could have done much more than only escorting them out of airspace. But when we judge that an incursion is not a direct threat, then a plane like these MiG-31s, the 3 Russian fighter jets, are escorted out of airspace. So we did exactly what we trained and prepared for. It's not new. NATO has done this for 60, 70 years, when the Soviet Union was still in place, and also with Russia.
The President of the United States has held talks with the Russian President, but neither NATO nor the European Union has done so since the invasion began, at least formally not. Why not? In your opinion, is diplomacy not the right path? Don't you think it's the high time to start a conversation with Russia? After all, we have recently seen successful diplomatic efforts between Israel and Hamas.
Yeah, again, thanks to Trump, I would argue. And my position would be this, that when it comes to a big conflict, like what Russia is doing, the unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine, sacrificing 1 million of its own people, as I said, but of course also in the process a lot of Ukrainian lives being lost because of this totally crazy war the Russians started against Ukraine. There was one person in the world who could break the deadlock with Putin, and that was President Trump after his convincing re-election in November last year. I am happy he did. I'm happy he is engaging. He is testing Putin, and at the moment he is extremely helpful by making sure that US weapons, again, move into Ukraine, paid for by allies. And this is lethal and non-lethal. And the Ukrainians needed, for example, air defense systems to defend their civilians, innocent people who are getting killed each night if you would not have the air defense systems in place. And thanks to also Slovenia, because of your Prime Minister and government deciding to participate in this program, we can now protect innocent civilians in Ukraine against these onslaughts.
But once again, why is the first man of NATO not talking?
Well, first of all, of course, the US is NATO, like Slovenia is NATO. So NATO is not something outside, it is the 32 together. And I think it is best for President Trump now to engage in those talks. Whenever in the future it will be useful for others to get engaged, we are all willing to do that. But it is my firm belief that at the moment it's best that Trump takes the lead here, because he is leading a country which is 25% of world economy, 25% of world military might. It is by far the most powerful country in the world. So he can have that influence at the moment. He can break that deadlock, get things moving. And I really commend him for what he's doing.
Is Slovenia still a reliable partner to NATO if our Prime Minister continues to say that we agreed to new 5% defense spending target, yet insists that 3% will be sufficient and that Slovenia will not spend more than that?
No, what Slovenia did is set out a path, a credible path now to that 3% in 2030. We totally agree on the way forward, and I commend the Prime Minister Robert Golob and his team for the fact that you have been so firm on committing to that goal for 2030. It helps me also for other allies to say, hey, we did not just commit to a goal for 2035. No, we all committed to create this credible path together. Look at a country like Germany, who is really leading the pack by doing 3.5% on core defense spending already in 2029, but also a country like Slovenia, now firmly committing to make sure you reach the 3% in 2030.
Mr. Rutte, thank you for your
Thank you very much.